Hello and welcome to the podcast, which is currently yet unnamed. Today I have a awesome guest, Coach Noah. How do I say your last name? Revoy?
Revoy. Revoy.
Revoy.
Either way works, yeah.
Who of all the coach people I have looked at online seems like an actual person that wants to help people, understands people. And so this episode probably won't be useful for too many listeners, but I'm going to ask Coach what it's like to actually spend your life helping people. And also I wanted to hear your thoughts on all the absolute insane life coach marketing out there, which seems designed to just rob people of their money, and if they don't have money, then of their credit.
Yes. Yeah, no, I got started in this really young. You could say I was born to it. When I was born, my parents, they gave me the name Noah Jonathan. So that Noah means hope, and Jonathan means sent from God. And so they they gave me this assignment. Literally, I was born, and they, holding up Simba and the Lion King.
This is your job.
Yeah, this is your job. You're going to bring people hope from God. And so I was trained from the time I was 2 to be a minister, and I had better training even than the other ministers around because my family was a family of basically priests. Not in the traditional sense, but even the women were spiritually wise women. And so they taught me how to ask people questions, reason with them, think with them, and then persuade them to understand moral and just and right ways of living. And so I was trained to do that from 2 years old. And it wasn't something I did because I tried. That was normal life. At 2 years old, my father would take me to the mall and he'd say, go talk to that person. And I'd just go walk up to an adult and start talking to them, strike up a conversation.
So I take it to mean that you have more real life experience than, let's say, some 25-year-old who just decided that they're going to be a life coach.
I have, when I was 25, I had more experience than most coaches will ever have in their entire life. I was already in my teen years. People were coming to me and asking marriage advice, and I felt very uncomfortable with that because I was a teenager. And I asked someone, why are you asking me for advice? And they said, because you can think. You can think about this. It's an emotional subject. It's really intense, and I can't think, but you can ask me the right questions to help me think it through so I don't make a rash decision. And so I had people coming to me always that were much older than me. Now I'm 45, so I'm in the middle more or less. I have younger people mostly asking advice. But I never told people, this is what I would do usually. I don't tell them that. Sometimes they ask, and I'm like, I don't think you should do what I would do. I always take the hard road because I want to learn, and all the learning is on the hard road. I said, you should take the easy road and just take the success and run with it.
Do the thing that you want to do, because if you do the thing that I want to do, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like going to a guy. I like to work out at the gym and go with a guy who's never been to the gym, and he says, well, just put the weight on you'd put on.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you'll die. It'll probably kill you. It'll fall on you and crush you.
Try that in 10 years. That we can talk about it.
Yeah. I have clients come to me sometimes and say, I want to be a coach. And I said, okay, that's great. You don't need to have your life completely figured out to be a coach. No, nobody has their life completely figured out. I have my life figured out to the point I'm at. I don't need to think about things like retirement. Why do I need to think about that? I'm not facing that problem. And so I tell them, if you're 20, coach some teenagers. If you're 30, coach some 20-year-olds. Just coach someone that's 1 or 2 steps behind you. But sometimes they'll come to me and they want to be a coach, and it's the same reason that most people that take psychology take it. It's because they're in desperate need of that help. And instead of saying, I need help, they want someone to, they want to become the helper because it feels somehow emasculating to ask for help. And I think that's a real big problem. Everyone who's elite got there by asking someone who's farther ahead of them for help.
Do you think they asked people further ahead, or they also just had a life where those people were in their orbit, and
yes.
So you had that person to talk to?
The people were in their orbit, but most people who have wisdom to give won't give it to you unless you ask. And there's reasons for that. I say this all the time. I'll tell someone something, And then 6 months later, I'll tell them they need to do it differently. And they'll say, why didn't you tell me to do it this way in the first place? And I said, you had to go through the process of doing it almost right in order to get to where you could do it right. You had to develop the wisdom of going through that process before you got to here. So I'll tell them, say it's a guy, I'll say, date any woman who will say yes to you right now.
Yeah.
Because you're not dating anybody. So maybe she's not quite right. Maybe she's a little chubby. Maybe she's a little frumpy. Maybe she's a year older than you or whatever, or a little neurotic. Well, a little neurotic, that's just women. But and that's okay. Like, you got to learn to deal with it. But she's not maybe marriage material for you. But you have no experience with women at all. Like, when guys are with no experience, I'll say, go talk to an older lady just to get experience talking to women. Like, talk to some granny
like a
at
grandma
the park.
on the street. Exactly.
Yeah, go to the park, talk to a grandma who's, with her grandkids there. And old people love to talk, so it's easy.
I think when you're young and you start figuring things out and you don't know much, you're like, oh, here's the answer. But, like, you can't give someone the answer because they can't really do it. They have to take the steps. I see so much, like, guy dating advice. I'm perusing Twitter. It's like, just do this. It's like, if you could just do this, you wouldn't be reading this advice.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I know this. There's I won't mention who it is, but there's a guy who gives really good exercise advice online on Twitter, and someone was asking him about dating advice, and he says, I don't know anything about that. He says, yeah, I'm dating and I have no problem with it, but he said, my only advice is be good looking and tall. Because that's all. I don't know why. He says,
I'm gonna try that.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure why women like me. He would say, and so he wasn't, and he was right to do that. He stayed in his lane. That was real smart, because he understood that other guys couldn't copy what he was doing.
And he probably isn't even aware of what he has. If he grew up being tall and smart, he's probably also calm. He's probably confident. If he's a physical trainer, he probably has, like, physical confidence that a lot of men lack. And he can't tell you, well, just be confident. Just be me. I don't.
Well, and he probably comes from a family that's like him.
Yeah.
So his family then would be networked in with other families like him, and that's the best way to meet someone. The best way to meet someone is that they're a friend of your family's friends. There's like some connection through family. And the reason for that is that when you're connected to other people, they treat you better.
Isn't there also like a natural filter on, like, the kind of person that you're going to meet through these connections?
Yeah, and there's this thing too where your family goes, yeah, they're friends of the family, but not her. Don't marry her.
We know better.
Okay.
Don't touch that.
She can be a friend of the family, but don't marry her. And they got your back on that stuff. Hopefully your family has that. But yeah, a lot of people, the thing is, we had this strange change in the 50s where people said, no, I'm not going to interfere with my kids' lives. Like, some woman told me it was creepy that I was telling my sons what to look for in a wife.
He should just listen to Twitter influencers, and especially Instagram influencers instead, right?
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah, just do what his eyes tell him to do.
Yeah.
And the idea, I mean, my great-grandparents, they had written it down, the rules for marriage for the family. They would talk to me about good breeding and how to make sure you picked a good spouse, and they had generational objectives for the family, on the genetic level as well.
People currently don't have any objectives at all, it seems. They're just like, just do something.
It's feel good right now. And so we're burning genetic capital that our ancestors accumulated over the last 5,000 years. We're burning it by indiscriminately wasting our time in our lives. Most people wasting it without having kids. Some people wasting it by picking the wrong spouse. And then, you're incompatible. It doesn't mean the other person's bad. You're just incompatible.
I feel like we're not given like verbal advice what to do, but we're also not seeing a lot of good examples practically. Like, one thing I see with healthy people, this is something. So I come from a messed up family. Like, when I listen to you talk, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had like any of this. And I didn't even realize this until I started working as a tutor. And so the people that hire tutors, are like upper middle class. They invest in their children, and so I'd go to their houses, and I was just shocked by like how differently they treated their kids, how much more effort they put in, like how much more social development their children had at the same age. I'm like, oh, no wonder those kind of girls would never date me. I'm like not a pleb. I'm intelligent, but I don't have like. There's something I don't have that they have, and the people they meet have.
There is this class barrier, and it's not even intelligence allows you to move up, but it doesn't. It's not. You don't leapfrog immediately there. It still takes a generation to go up a level, and it's not. It's more conscientiousness than intelligence. So in the big 5 personality traits, conscientiousness is the one I think people talk more about neuroticism, but conscientiousness is the important one. If your conscientiousness is high enough, you can overcome problems in all the other areas.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be, growing up, I think I was one of those folks that was quite insecure, and I was like, well, I'm smart, so I'm going to focus on people who are smart. But it's not that useful a trait unless you want to be, a mathematician or a physicist or whatever. It's useful. Of course, you don't want to be stupid, but as many intelligent, like high IQ, that is people that make poor choices because they make emotional choices. They make choices based on, well, lots of emotions that I'm not aware of, like group consensus, fear.
I'm smart, therefore I can use my brain to dominate my emotions, and that's not how it works.
Yes, it does not work at all.
And what's interesting is I had a client, he says to me, you're going to have to tell me what to do because I'm dumb. And I'm not, he's like really plain. He says, I'm like 80 IQ. And he says, I'm just not going to figure it out. So you can tell me the why, but mostly just tell me what to do next. He says, I'm just paying you to be smart for me. He had self-awareness. I talked to a guy with 140 IQ, and he's got tremendously good excuses for why he's doing stuff that was stupider than the guy with the 80 IQ. But the 80 IQ guy is not smart enough to make excuses for himself. He can't figure out any good excuses, so he just goes, okay, I guess I got to change.
There's just self-acceptance, just naked self-acceptance. This is how it is.
Yeah. That's why I like to talk about foolish and wise rather than smart and intelligent, because you can be. I knew a guy growing up, and he had some learning disability that he was born with, and he probably had roughly a 75, 80 IQ. He had a job. He ended up with a girlfriend. He died young because he also had a bunch of health problems that came along with it. He was not attractive at all. He moved in weird ways, you could hardly understand him. But he made more of a life than some of these young guys I see with like 115, 120 IQs that are neats living in their parents' basement.
Yeah, you don't really have to be that smart. I think it's conscientiousness. I think the other trait is personal courage. And I don't know what that falls under, but it's like that willingness to be like, oh, I messed up. Oh, I'm really doing this wrong. Like this isn't working. And I think, like as you said, if you're used to using your brain, or I think now it's abusing your brain, you can lie to yourself extremely well.
Yeah, I think that comes under openness. A lot of times people think openness to new experience means that someone says, would you like to try cocaine? And you go, that might be fun. But
that's what I always took it as.
Yeah, but what I took it as is someone says, and this is what I'm seeing in practice, is someone says to you, okay, the way you've been doing things and the way your parents did it and your grandparents did it, that's not going to work anymore. And you're going to have to adapt. And this is what will probably work instead. And they'll be like, well, I'll try. Let's see how it goes. And they're the people. That's such an
uncommon trait, man.
Yeah. And the high openness does that. If the problem is that they're also, because I'm really high in openness. So someone suggests, let's do this, and I'm really low in neuroticism, so I barely notice fear. So let's do this extremely dangerous and risky and scary thing, and I'm like, that sounds like fun. and oh man, there's stories I can't tell in public.
I tell me after. Yeah.
I don't want to end up in Gitmo, but there's interesting things I've been involved with and done, and it's because of that. But I have high in conscientiousness, so generally for the things that are directly bad for me, the conscientiousness kicks in and goes, it might be fun, but then you're going to have consequences. And those consequences, and it's mostly the consequence of if you put yourself out there as a person who gives others advice in a leadership role, you have to set the example. You know, I don't feel like going to work out today. Yeah, but how are you going to tell guys to be consistent at their workouts if you don't go just because you don't feel like it?
It's an interesting take on like openness, because looking back, I was definitely like one part of openness tends to be like intellectual curiosity, and there's a lot of guys that have that. I definitely had that, but I was also the kind of person like, I don't want to try this new food, I don't want to go to this new place that I don't know. So maybe those are different aspects, and I think
it
that,
could
like,
have been neuroticism giving you fear response on those things because there's a potential downside, whereas intellectual curiosity, there's almost no downside. I learned something and it's stupid. It's like, oh, okay, I'll forget it then. Go on to the next thing, you know?
I see. Yeah, I mean, there's no downside risk to intellectual masturbation except for, wasting your time and being an annoying person. But that trait of courage, it's so rare to find. Even people who are like open in the traditional sense of like, oh, I'll try this, oh, I'll go on a vacation. You see people who are like, will do anything to improve their life except for like look at themselves honestly.
Well, and I don't know whether this is an inherent trait that I have, although a lot of my family members, especially my father's side, were known for courage, physical courage. There's a lot of people that were military men and stuff, and they were known for that. But I was raised, and one of the key phrases I would hear over and over again, or the key concepts, is that I had to be ready to die for what I believed in and for speaking the truth. So if people didn't like it was expected that people would not agree with me. I was told, expect people will not agree with you and they will not accept what you have to say, because if you're speaking the truth, most people are going to be somewhat object to it in some way, because it will expose something that they need to do differently and they don't want to, so they're going to reject it. And so if you're willing to die for what you believe in, everything else becomes less scary.
Yeah, you just have to be willing to be disliked, right?
Yeah.
It's not as bad as dying.
I met a lady who spent 8 years in isolation in a Chinese prison because she was a preacher. She was a minister in China, and she was preaching about the Bible, and they arrested her. And they put her in jail for 8 years. And she was a Canadian citizen, but somehow they weren't able to get her out. It probably was low on their priority list. And I met her, and she had gone slightly loopy. She had, she broke in a healthy way. She instead of becoming sad and depressed, she became deliriously happy. So, if you're gonna break, that's the better way to break. But, that's the kind of people I was meeting as a kid. And I was like, well, she could do that. You could do that too.
But now we're raising a generation of people who are like dying to go with the consensus.
Don't say anything that offends me. Where's my safe space? Yeah.
It's horrible to see that. I had a weird role at a college some years ago, and it was like a well-known liberal arts college, and so some kids say, "Oh, look at my essay," and I'm like, "What happened? Like, these kids can't make arguments. They can't think clearly, and they're not dumb. I see they're not like stupid, but they're taught to be stupid."
Well, growing up, I grew up in a really religiously conservative family. And so generally you grow up in a very conservative family, you become a rule follower and you just do what you're told. So that's kind of true. Like I'm mostly German background, so rules are important to me, and it annoys me when people don't follow the rules. It is a German thing, right?
Like every German I know is so conscientious.
Yeah, and it's genetic.
Okay.
It's genetic. I see someone throw trash on the ground and I want to murder them. Like everything should be a hanging offense. Littering, let your dog poop on the ground, and I'm in Southern Europe, and so littering is pretty normal. And I grew up in a German town, and I remember being very proud of the fact there was never litter on the floor. Because if you littered, I have seen grown men threaten other men over littering, that they were going to beat them up. And because they're like, and I remember, this is my town, don't litter in my town.
So people had a sense of like ownership over their place.
Yes,
they weren't just like...
Yes. Yeah. And then if you saw something, you picked it up. So it was clean. And we were known for that in our area, in our part of Ontario, from Canada originally. And so it was always clean. And so I have that rule following. But I had it very clearly explained to me the difference between legitimate and illegitimate authority. And that you had no obligation to listen to illegitimate authority. In fact, your obligation was to oppose it. And so the problem with the young people today is they have no discrimination over authority. So they can't tell the difference between legitimate and illegitimate. It's all authority to them, and it's kind of like a might makes right type thing. If you're in charge, then I'll do what you say. Because I get ahead by following, you know.
Right, yeah. If you're a teacher or in any kind of position with a job, if you have a uniform or some prefixes or suffixes after your name, then, or you've written a paper in the underwater basket weaving studies, like, you are an expert, and us we're not experts. You don't have any credentials, right?
Yeah. No, well, and this is one of the things that I think I make more money than 99% of therapists. I get paid more power than 99% of therapists. I work with better clients, so it's better for me. A lot of therapists, their clients are killing them, frankly. They're dealing with people that are extremely difficult to deal with and may never get better. And that's, you know, I don't deal with that. I deal with performance clients. My clients, I take them from they're doing okay up to they're doing fantastic and their lives are like just off the charts amazing. And so that's better for me. And the reason I do that is, I credit the main reason is I never went to school to be a psychologist or a therapist. Not really. I went to school to be a minister. And so it was completely, you don't want people to need you as a minister, because that means if they need you, they're still spiritually weak and immature. You want them to grow into spiritual adults and, if possible, become your peers. So it's very much a paternal aspect, not paternalism in the sense of treating people like children, but patriarchal in the sense of treating people as adults under development. I'm going to get you up to that point.
You're treating them as children in a benevolent sense, that you want to help them grow up.
Yes.
Like, you care about them and you're going to guide them, but you're guiding them towards, you know, being an adult just like you would with a child you care about, instead of what I see parents doing now, which is like, it looks like child abuse to me. They keep their children from growing up. So,
well, you know why? You know why? Almost all children today have two mommies. Seriously, they got like their biological
two
mom,
spiritual mommies, right?
And their dad who's so fat he's got tits. You know, they got two.
Or he's so skinny that he can't, you know, wrestle his wife. Yes, I've seen them.
And it's like, you see. I see all these photos of the guy and the girl sitting beside each other, and there's like a shot down at their legs, and his two legs together are the size of her one leg. It's very, very sad. But what happens is these children grow up with two people that are mommying them. And mother's care is amazing for children under 7. It's exactly what they need. You know, my wife walks out of the house, and right away my 4-year-olds are like, "Where's mama? Where's mama? Where's mama?"
Yeah, they need that attachment.
You just saw her leave. Yeah, but I want her here. I don't like when she's not here. You know, my oldest one, he articulates it better. He's like, if she goes out of the house, I don't know if she's safe. In other words, I don't know if she'll ever come back. And it's like, she just went downstairs to the car to get something. You know, and immediately they were. But after 7, they stop needing mother so much, and they need father. The reason is that mother's focus is on care. And under 7, they can't do much for themselves. So they need care. They need someone to do it for them. After 7, they need to do it for themselves. So I got an 11-year-old, and if he wants a snack, I tell him, he comes to me, asks for a snack, and I say, well, what do you want? He says, I'd like a fried egg and some toast. Great. You know where the fried egg, or you know where the eggs are. You know where he's got his own frying pan. You know where your frying pan is.
You can do it.
Do it. Yep. You've done it before. And he's, no, but I want you to do it for me. And I'm like, no, you're 11. Do it for yourself.
And you can make one for me as well.
Yeah. And it's like, I'll be sitting in my office. I'll ask my wife, hey, can you get me a drink? And my son will say, can you get me one too? And I'm like, no, get your own wife to get you a drink. Oh, you don't have one? Then you have to get your own drink. And I'm like, you know, it's encouraging him to do things for himself.
Yeah, take authority over his own life and his needs. And I guess if you have two mommies, two spiritual mommies, and there's no one there teaching you, no one behaving with a sense of authority, you're not gonna know how to do that either.
Yeah. And when you take responsibility, it's about responsibility. Take responsibility for yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything. You can still delegate. But I said to my kids, we're looking at buying a property, and it's got several unrestored houses, and one of the houses is finished, and we'll live in that, and we'd restore the others for my kids to eventually live in. And what I said to them is, I said it's way cheaper for me to pay someone to fix that house than it is to do it myself. Because if I do it myself on an hour basis, if you make a few hundred an hour and the construction worker makes a tenth that, 1 hour of your work pays him for a whole day. But I said to my son, we're going to do it anyway ourselves, because this shows that we're not beholden to hiring this out. I used to run a construction company, so I know how to do these things. And I said also, you're going to build the house with your own hands, so that at the end of the day, you're sitting there in a place you built. You have the confidence that if it falls down, you can build it again.
Yep.
And that then stretches out into everything in life. There's a lot of things that doesn't make sense to do them, makes sense to pay someone, but sometimes you do it for yourself because you can.
Yeah, having that that autonomy and that agency, being like, okay, if this is broken, I'm not going to be sitting here hoping that someone saves me from like a leaky faucet, or I can replace this piece of plumbing. It's maybe nasty, but it's not rocket science, and like I can tackle it.
Yeah, I have a client. He's a computer programmer, makes really good money. He bought a new house, not a new house. He bought a used house, very good price, but it needed a tremendous amount of mostly aesthetic work in the house. And he starts phoning people. Nobody gets back to him. Finally, he gets a mutual friend to get back to him. And the guy says, oh yeah, we can come out and do a budget for you. He says, oh great, when will that be? Well, it's about 6 months from now before I can do the budget. It'll be another 6 months before I can actually do the work. And the guy's like, I need to move in 6 weeks. Like, what am I going to do? He spent 6 weeks working all night long repairing his house and all day long working at his job for 6 weeks. I bet he feels
much better about himself now.
Yes. Well, what was great about it is I was going through the course that I do with most of my clients, using my book here, Reprogram Your Life. And what it essentially does, it takes you to become a full man, or a woman if you're a woman taking it. You come to a full sense of maturity where you realize no one's coming to save you, and you're the one that has to shoulder your own burden.
Not even the government?
Yeah, nobody. We have to save ourselves from the government. So what happens is, in the middle of this, he's sitting there going, man, I wish someone would just come and help me finish this job. And he had a little breakdown. And actually, breakdowns can be really good things. It can be great growing moments. Because what's breaking down is your understanding of the world. And now is the time to build up a better understanding. And he come to the realization that he was the guy that was there to save everybody. He was the dad. He was the dad. He was the husband. He was the one that was there to shoulder the burden. And he says all of a sudden it was easier. Grief? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He was like sad for the, he was sad because no one was helping him. Then he kind of let that go. And then he was kind of, a bit of mourning for letting the child go. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, I actually became a man. Becoming a man requires struggle. And that was, for him, that was his struggle that made him fully click that, no, I am a man. I'm a full man. And I get my own, I do my work as a man, and I don't complain about it. And he says after that, the rest of the work was hard work, but psychologically it was easy because he owned it. He embraced it.
Being raised by kind of, how would I say it, like non-present parents. I feel like I got that as a very young child, but it also seems bad if you have too much weight placed on you.
Yes. When
you can't really and shouldn't really be handling it.
I said yesterday to my kid, I was joking with him about something, and I said, man, it's like dealing with a child. And he says, Dad, I am a child. I said, yeah, I know, I'm not upset about it. I'm like, I'm joking with him because, in some ways he's very mature for his age, and in some ways he still is a child.
He's still a child, yeah.
Yeah, like he can do things that are beyond his responsibility, but not consistently, and so I can't expect it. But it's you probably can hear children in the background, yeah. For some reason, when I'm working, they like to stand outside my door and talk.
They want to see if they can break your attention.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it is.
I would fail. I would be like, stop. But
Well, fortunately, I got the headphones, so I don't hear them probably as much as they're getting picked up on the microphone. But it adds authenticity. I actually have a family. I'm not joking. One of the things about, you mentioned earlier to talk about what's going on with online coaching, and one of the issues with it is you have a lot of people. So there's a couple of things. One, there's a lot of people who need coaching, and they find something that works for them. And because it worked for them, it must work for everybody else in the entire world.
I went to the gym and it cured my depression, and everybody will cure their depression.
Yes,
by going
exactly.
to the gym.
Going to the gym in the way I did it. I changed my diet, and everyone should change their diet to the same way.
It's the soy oil or whatever.
Yeah, it's the soy boy oil. Stop rubbing it all over yourself. But it's that one size fits all. Okay, so they have too limited experience for this work.
Yep.
I have clients. I have over my history had clients that were drug addicts, prostitutes, murderers, criminals, all the way to like trad moms with kids at home and completely healthy, normal lives, and centimillionaires, all the way down to people who couldn't afford me, and I'd give them a couple of free sessions because they needed it, and I could. If I have time, I will sometimes give free sessions away, quite often, to people who are in great financial need. So I've seen people from every kind of background. It's hilarious because sometimes my clients will come to me and they'll say, I want to tell you about what I've been doing, but I'm not sure you can handle it. And I'm like, oh, I can handle it. Tell me what you've been doing. And they'll tell about having sugar babies or being a sugar baby, or one client was a porn star, and so she'll tell me a little bit about what's happening in that industry, and it's like, yeah, I've heard it all. Don't worry. It was funny, actually. The porn star had less scary stories to tell me than the prostitutes did. So, and you work with everybody, you start to realize that the solutions that work for you won't work for other people.
Is this a problem with therapists? Like, one thing I've seen with therapists is most of them are from a very specific social class. Like, you have to be a certain kind of person to like go to school, do well in school, I forget which one of them has a doctorate, but like they're all like these like middle upper class-ish people who just haven't had like much life exposure. Yeah, and they're trying to help like whoever.
The only therapist, I know one therapist who actually came from a terrible family, very poor background, and he's a really good therapist. But most of them, it's that same way, and it's and most therapists are women, so they approach therapy in a way that might be good for a woman. That is not going to work for a man. Yeah, let's talk about it. And the man wants to problem solve. The woman wants to blow off emotional energy. Most women could fire their therapist and get 2 female friends. And just like listen to their problems, and they listen to your problems. And I think
that's what friends used to be for, right?
How do you feel? Yeah. How do you feel about that? And that's it. That's all the therapist is doing for them. People be like, well, you got to give therapy time. How much time? Like, 3 years at least. 3 years of weekly therapy. And what did you get out of it? Well, I feel better. I said, you'd also feel better if you took a bump of cocaine. Like, that doesn't mean it's good for you. Feeling better is not a measure of success. Can you perform better? Like, are you better at managing your relationships? Are you better at managing your life? Can you are you better able to cope with stress? That's a more objective measurement. I feel better. How do you really know you felt better than you did 3 years ago? Maybe your impressions of 3 years ago were too pessimistic.
Do you tend to find that guys are really looking for like systematic answers? Like, okay, why am I feeling like this? How do I go from here to here?
Guys are like, okay, I got this problem. There's a thing I can't do. Great example. My career is taking off, and I need to work more, and I need to focus more of my mental energy on my work, and I'm going to make a lot more money, but I I need my wife to do more domestic stuff because I can't do any more of the domestic stuff. Like I'm still, of course, you parent my kids, but I can't wash dishes and take a mid six figures job seriously. And my wife makes peanuts, so I'd love to retire her, but I don't know how to go through that process. How do I convince her that she'd be more happy working like an hour or two, a day or two a week, or not at all, and like enjoying the kids in the home more?
It's very practical, right?
Yeah,
And
it's very practical. They just want to know.
You.
No, therapists will go, well, have you asked your wife what she wants? It's like, I mean, that
I like
at some
the
point,
therapist voice. It's very authentic.
yeah, and
How does she feel about this?
why is it that you want that? Why do you feel it is that you want to make these changes? I'm way past the emotional part of the decision. I'm now into the execution. So people come to me when they're in the execution phase. How do I get from A to B?
Do you ever have to ask them hold on, what do you really want to get to B?
In the sales process, I will ask them, do you really want that thing you're asking for? Or is it something I talked about and you looked at and said, that sounds like fun on Twitter, and now you think you want it? Are you sure you want it? And because I'll have guys tell me, I really want to retire my wife. And I'm like, okay, great. Have you talked to her about it? No. Then you don't really want it. I really want to have a closer relationship to my spouse. Great. So what have you been doing to make that happen? Nothing.
I've been reading Twitter about how to do it.
I've been reading Twitter about how to do it. And it's like, I would expect the guy to be making some moves and just not the right ones. And that's why he's coming to me. But sometimes they haven't made any. And those people almost never become clients because they don't really want it. And by the end of the conversation, I explain to them that I don't really think you want this yet. You're shifting to want it, but you're not there yet. Come back and look at this again in 6 months. See if it's changed.
It's so different from most of the sales I see for coaching everywhere, which is you need coaching, you want to do this, please give me your money. And that seems to be the majority of the strategy.
I'm fully booked up all the time. We had to do this call outside of my normal booking hours because my booking hours are always booked way ahead. And my thing isn't get more clients. My thing is say no to enough people that I don't overwhelm myself with work. So I probably should put my fees up to help mediate that somewhat.
You got to work at that supply and demand curve, man. Yeah.
The problem is every time I put my fees up, my demand increases. So if you're charging $50 an hour, you get into you're dealing with a class of people that for $50 is a lot of money for them. Yep. If you're dealing with $500 an hour, then you're dealing with people who for $500 is no big deal for them. Like they spent $2,000 last night on dinner. So what's $500?
At the same time, you don't want it to be too little for them, right? Because if they don't pay enough, they often don't take it seriously.
Yes.
It's
well, for the wealthy people, it's the time investment. So for the wealthy people, they're like, get this done now. There's a hypnotist in the U.S. and he charges $1 million an hour for hypnotism, and he's fully booked for the year. Always, he's booked a whole year ahead.
Actually, that's something I wanted to ask about, because the other thing I see, everybody read Alex Hormozy's How to Make an Offer, and it's it has to be amazing and it has to happen in 2 hours. How do you deal with people that have unreasonable expectations of how long personal change takes? It's never fast. It's not go over weekend, say some words, look at Tony Robbins, say Rod,
I can make negative personal change really quick.
Yes, you can get traumatized.
I'll break
really
your
quick.
arm. I'll break your arm. Oh no, it's kind of
trauma is fast.
Yeah, I'll tell people it's like strength training. So if you've never done it before, the initial wins are really obvious and easy and quick, and you'll have this what they call novice gains. So you will triple your strength in a month when you start working out. And it's not because your muscles get that much bigger, it's because you just learn how to do it properly. And some people come to me with broken relationships, and it's like, maybe you should try hugging your wife occasionally. You know, you just told me everything you don't like about her. She sounds horrible. You should divorce her immediately. And he's like, oh, no.
It's not that complicated.
No, but there's a bunch of things I really like as well. Well, tell me those. And then I'll say to them, how often do you tell her the negatives? Every single day. She needs to know what's wrong. And I'm like, okay, how often do you tell her the positives? I never done that. So like, okay, guy, you know, I don't think you need coaching. You just need to do these like 3 or 4 things. And then if that doesn't work, come back to me in 3 months, you know, and then we'll work together. And sometimes, like, I would love it to be able to have a 30-minute conversation with someone and save their marriage, and they don't have to spend anything on coaching. Because oftentimes the things people are doing are so obvious. You know, my wife has thought about being a coach, and she was thinking it was so complicated. And I'm like, honestly, just tell them this. It'll be so obvious. And you just tell them these very obvious things. And it'll be obvious to you, but not to them. It's obvious to you because that's what we're doing. It's not obvious to them because they've never seen it before. You know, how do you explain the color red to a blind man?
Yeah. How do you explain what it looks like, you know, when someone grew up in a house without any love, without any affection?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not how we treat each other. Like, oh, okay.
I ask in this book here, one of the questions I ask is, have you ever experienced true love? And I give some examples. It could be friend love, it could be parent to child, and it could be spouse love. About half my clients have never experienced true love in their life, ever.
Do you mean like unconditional regard, or like sort of
the kind of love where you will put that other person's interests ahead of your own? That kind of love where you love them deeply for who they are, not that you love their flaws, and not that you tolerate their bad behavior, but that you love them even though they have those things.
And if you haven't experienced that from your family, it's hard to know what it looks like in practice. Yeah.
And if you haven't experienced it, how do you love yourself that way?
No, you can't.
And a lot of people, if I will get them to think about themselves, and they're either thinking about their past self, some traumatized version of their past self, or the present. I'm like, that's great. You can't do nothing about the past guy, though. You can't even do anything about the present. Like, we're in this conversation. That's where we're going to be for the next few minutes. Like, we can't do anything about it. We decided that in the past. Past us decided it for current us.
Yep.
But future you can love. And you love future you by making good choices in the present so that future you benefits from it. And you have to love future you enough to do hard things, for present you to do really hard things. And if you don't, you're just not going to, there's no coaching that will fix that. You have to get the love first, and that's what I help them do.
How do people find you? Like, how do they know to work with you versus the nonsense scam artists that I see everywhere?
So usually they follow me on Twitter for a while, and then they check out my videos on YouTube, which are all old. I'm starting to produce new ones again. Or they see an interview like we're doing today, and what they'll say is, you seem authentic. You seem like you will hold me accountable, which is important because a lot of coaches will just tell you whatever gets you to pay for the next session. And you seem like you know what you're talking about, and you know, and you really care about people, which I think I was actually the first one. The authentic, I really care, and I really do care about people. And actually, my thing that I'm starting in September, in this month, to work on, is figuring out how I can reach more people than the ones I can reach one-on-one. So I can only take on 2 or 3 clients a month because I work really intense for shorter periods of time with people. And so, 2 or 3 clients a month, that's less than 40 people a year that I can help. That's great. That's not going to change the world.
Unless those people help.
Yes. Yeah, unless those people help other people. Yeah. I have to find a way to ramp that up. And I have ideas. I did write a book. This book on manipulation has helped thousands of people to get manipulation out of their life so that they are no longer either a victim of it or manipulating those around them. And I've had people write to me and say, my business is making more money because I'm better able to vet clients and business partners. My colleagues and I stopped fighting because we stopped manipulating each other. You know, I gave it to my wife, and she finally realized her mother was manipulating her into arguing with me, and now our marriage is stronger than ever because we're more united, because we're resistant to the manipulation. And so I know it's doing good. And so books is one way that you can amplify your message, but I'm really working on some kinds of do-it-yourself courses so that the deep inner work that I do with people, people who can't afford to work with me one-on-one, can go and find that other way to work with me. And I think that's why you don't see most coaches writing books, because they don't have anything to write about. They don't actually know anything. They just know how to make you feel good. That's it.
And it seems like if they're making you feel good, then they're probably not really doing much good for you. And that's going to be one of my questions. Like, is it hard to make a business telling people things that are probably very hard for them to hear?
It is. It is. And occasionally I have to fire clients and then occasionally they fire me because they don't like what they hear. And occasionally I fire them because they're not progressing. They are refusing to progress. And they're intentionally sabotaging the relationship. But it is difficult to tell people the truth. But there's enough people in this world that want to hear the truth that I can maintain a business. So I've always all my whole life been very polarizing. Either people really, really like me, or they really hate me. And if they hate me, they usually don't tell me. They just disappear. So that's good. I guess I'm supposedly sufficiently intimidating that they don't want to tell me they hate me. So they disappear. And then the people who really like me, they go and they tell their friends. And they vouch for me. And so I get a lot of clients that way. I have people who, I got this client from that client, who I got from that client, who I got from the other client over here. And it's like it's a fourth generation client, I'll call it, fourth or fifth generation client. And those are always the best people to work with, because people are referring people to me who are already on a level that they're ready to work with me. So it always turns out good.
All right. Okay, folks. Well, if you want to work with Coach Noah, good luck, because he's probably not available. But where should people find you, and where should they look for whatever you're planning to put out that might help people in a more scalable fashion?
So the place you're always going to find me is noahrevoy.com. So that's my website. You'll also find me on Twitter, as long as Twitter remains a relatively free speech platform, at Noah Revoy. And so that's where I post most often. You'll see me post a lot of things. I'll have conversations with a client, and I will then post something. It's almost always after a conversation with a client, because it gets my juices flowing and I feel like I have to get that out. Sometimes it's in response to, I don't like to respond to current trends, because current trends are almost always designed to just get you angry about stuff. And nothing wrong with anger when it's appropriate. But you're getting angry. They're getting you angry at the wrong person. Men versus women, and parents versus kids, that kind of stuff. Whereas
things you just have no influence over whatsoever.
Yeah, get mad about the world. I have a lot of young friends that are young 20s and very politically interested. And I said, no one should take you seriously, you and your political ideas seriously, until you get married, have kids, start a business, and get about 40.
Yep.
And then people will take you seriously. And until you can do those things, you shouldn't be worrying about politics.
Yeah.
Now, there's very few guys that can escape that. Yeah. Demonstration. I know how to run a nation. Good. Can you run a family? Can you apply those same principles? Run a family? No. Can you run a business? No. One of the things that, Trump's had a hard time with his marriages, but he could run a business. Yep. That means he's got executive skills. Do something interesting in your life. Don't live your whole life online. Go out and do interesting things. Have interesting adventures. Take risks. Do stupid stuff sometimes.
Until you do, you don't actually know anything. Because, you think you can run a business until you try it, or you think you can run a family until you try it, and then you realize how you know absolutely nothing, and all the courses and all your professors have taught you possibly like negative information, like you're less well informed and less capable now than if you started with like, I'm ignorant. Like you'd be in a better position just claiming ignorance.
And if you're really young and you're watching this, like under 20, and you want to get that experience, go take martial arts and right from the beginning, say you want to take a fight in a year. Okay, and like an amateur fight, obviously. And then you'll get your ass kicked, and then you'll realize you don't know how to fight. And you'll realize how bad it is when you're unprepared. And I mean, you'll be prepared enough, but when you're unprepared, you're not strong enough, and you don't know what you're doing, and you get your ass handed to you. It's a really good lesson because that's probably what's going to happen to you the first 2 or 3 times you start a business and the first 2 or 3 relationships you're in.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. 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 Although I do see young people today overestimating risk, a lot of people still overestimate their ability to handle things and don't. What you have to do is you have to be okay with getting punched in the face and losing.
You have to experience it, I think, and be. Otherwise, you just fear it more than the reality of it.
Yeah. I ask people, when's the last time you had a serious loss? And they're like, well, serious loss? I have a whole collection of small losses. Like, okay, you need to be sufficiently ambitious that you're getting yourself in over your head every once in a while.
I think especially when you're younger, right? Especially when it's easier for you to bounce back and you don't have, a family, you don't have, like, your losses aren't really catastrophic. They're just difficult and irritating.
Yeah. 9 out of 10 businesses that I've started have failed. And most of them have cost me nothing or less than $100 to fail. Because I have ways of testing a new business idea for under $100. I'll start a URL, I'll pop up a website real quick. And I will put a product for sale, and I'll describe the product and what it does. And if I get 100 people clicking yes and giving me their money, I'll turn that over to the developers and they'll finish the product and I'll sell it. Right? It doesn't exist. If nobody wants it, then why would I put money into developing it? So figure out ways that you can lose cheaply, and if you win, it's all upside.
Yeah, asymmetric returns.
Yeah, that's what the elites do. That's why they're like, heads I win, tails you lose.
Yep.
They always have this ways that people think that they manufacture the situations that we're going through. They don't. They just shake the box and see what breaks or doesn't break or how things turn out, and then they know how to profit from it. They're sitting there and they're saying, if it goes up, I profit. If it goes down, I profit. If there's hyperinflation, I profit. If there's hyperdeflation, I profit. Like they're going to make money on one or the other. Yeah, they always got some hedge on it. Do that yourself. Guy goes out on a date with a girl. He's like, man, I hope this works out, and she's the one, because I'm sick of dating. Which it's like the second girl they've dated. I'm sick of dating. This takes too much time. No. You go there, and your only job is to find out whether you like being with her or not. Do you enjoy spending time with her? And you'll know by the end of the night, yes or no. I enjoy spending time with her, or I don't. That's it. It's a definite win. Either way, you win. I know the information I came here to know. Even if it's miserable, if it's a terrible date, you have a funny story to tell your friends.
When I was younger and realized that I was terrible at interacting with especially female people, I was like, a date is a place to like practice my social skills. I have this like captive audience, and she hates it, she doesn't like it, she likes me, doesn't matter. I'm gonna see if I can like have a good time, make her have a good time, whether she's into it or not.
Yeah, I've gone with young guys, and we go to like a bar or something, and I will intentionally sometimes irritate some of the girls, so that to show them how actually girls will take that as long as they're having some sort of emotional response. They like it and they'll stay there. And hating you is a perfectly acceptable response. They can get so angry at you, and then a few minutes later they're so happy and laughing, and it's just they want you to stimulate some emotions, and none of them last very long. Like it's like a very quick burning fire. You throw some fuel and whoosh, it burns up, and then boom, it's back down again, and you got to throw something else on the fire. just don't be boring. Don't throw water on the fire.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the worst thing is apathy. It's not hate; it's apathy. It's like this man provokes no reaction in me. He's unwilling to take the slightest risk to offend me. Like, well,
that is what the disgust reaction I think in a lot of women is that you're not giving them anything, and the vacuum of emotional energy makes them feel disgusted.
I wonder what the mechanism is. I would guess that it's like they're sensing that this man is timid, like he's unwilling to take a stand, and that's what causes the disgust.
Yes, and for women, emotional stimulation is about equal to the stimulation we get from seeing a beautiful woman. So there are some women that give men a disgust response just by looking at them.
Yeah.
And there are some men who give women a disgust response just by interacting with them a little bit. And it's the same reason. It's like that person is not giving me any tingles at all, neither good nor bad. And they'd rather be like, oh, I hate that misogynistic pig. When can I fuck him? and they'd rather be like that than, he's kind of a marshmallow, I guess. He's okay.
Yeah,
he's nice. Yeah, that's like he's nice. I don't know why he's single. Would you date him? Hell no.
No. Seemed like a brother, a neutered brother.
Yeah. He's like one of the girls.
Yeah.
So there's a whole load of things which guys our age, we already know all this, and
if we're lucky we know all this, and if not, it's such a sad thing to see an older guy that's still clueless.
Yeah, and there's a lot we could teach younger men. There are some things that we're occasionally even surprise me about how bad the modern dating market is. But what I tell guys is just be a top 5% guy, which nowadays means has a job, basic social skills, and doesn't smell. That's it. That's it nowadays. Oh, and not fat. That's it. And you're in the top 5%. It's never been easier to be in the top 5%. And then you have like the top 10% of women available to you. And that's still, even now, that's still a pretty good group of women.
And if you don't like the women where you are, you can find a different place. The world is big, and people really are different in different cultures.
Yeah. I had a business meeting recently, and all of the European women, they were from Scandinavia and Southern Europe and everywhere, they were all fit and gorgeous and wearing nice, beautiful, feminine clothes, and all their movements were feminine and beautiful. And all of the American women on the call, there was one Canadian woman who was also fit and attractive, but she was living in Europe. All of the American women were obese, like round, completely round, and dressed like people of Walmart. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if this is obvious to anybody else.
They all know on a subconscious level. I'm sure like the dynamics are there, and you're having fun like watching them play out without anyone saying anything.
I still remember I come to Portugal the first time, and I've got photos with my couple of friends that I was traveling with, and all these gorgeous women around us, and everyone is like very physically more affectionate here, so we're hugging and like in a group photo. And then I come back and my friend's like, hey, you want to see not my friends, but like the people in my church, the women in my church that were there, like, you want to see my, hey, can we see your vacation photos? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And got some photos on our phone, and they're looking at them, and they're like, oh. And they're like, every one of these girls is gorgeous. I'm like, yeah. And the ugliest one there was better looking than the best looking girl in my church. It's like, yeah, well, they're all fit, good looking.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not propagandized too much yet.
Yeah, so I went and married one in Portugal instead.
There we go. One last question, though. I think we could talk for a while, but I don't want to keep you too long.
It's good to keep the show about an hour or two.
Yeah. You mentioned that like the most elite people like ask people for help, right? And so what if you're a young guy, like 20, maybe early 30s, like what do? How do you find the help? How do you find people who are not charlatans? How do you find the right help? Because I found that the loudest voices are the ones that are best at marketing and probably the worst at actually helping.
Yeah, I had a big marketing organization that helped Jordan Peterson get big and come to me and say, "Hey, you want to work with us? Let's see if we're compatible." And I was too controversial to work with them, and so we didn't end up working together. And they wanted to be able to say, we're going to tell you what messages to say because those are the ones that are going to sell. And I'm like, no, I'm going to say the message that's on my mind at the moment. And I don't care if it sells or not. I'm like, okay, but I just don't think we can work together then. And that was fine. You want to look to guys that have got the life you want to have in 10, 20, 30 years. That's the guys you want to get advice from. Your best bet is not to hire me. It's to find a guy like me. That there isn't many, but find a guy like me in your local area and say, teach me, and then do things for him to make it worthwhile for him to teach you.
Basically find a mentor and offer your time. If that's all you have.
Yeah, and your time is worth 1/10 of his time. So if he mentors you for an hour, you're gonna I don't care, mow his lawn, help him with his business stuff, have his back when he needs it. If I was living in the States, I would have a small army of young men that I was mentoring, and that would be my little Mannerbund. Keep those guys on the straight and narrow, help them get married, help them set up their families, so that I had this highly trusted group of young men around me. If society collapses, I've got my little army going. I don't know why more guys. A lot of men just end up kind of lazy socially. They make a lot of money and then they just want to relax. And that's boring to me. Relaxing is boring. I don't relax very often. I'm almost always doing something. Can't stop moving. If you're a young guy, go find one of the guys like me and tell him, look, I want to trade help. I don't want to leech off you. If you have to, though, hire someone. If you're hiring someone, hire someone that has the life you want and that is telling the truth. That's what you're looking for. Someone who tells the truth, because they're going to tell you the truth.
What does not telling the truth look like?
Telling people, first of all, people that don't tell the truth also tend to fall for other people's lies. So you'll see them repeating a lot of lies. And second of all, those who aren't telling the truth, they never run afoul of anybody. So I was kicked off of Facebook because the FBI had a secret court order to kick me off because we found this out later because they kind of spilled the beans about the secret court order after the time had run out. But I'm kicked off of Meta platforms because of the FBI, because I was too dangerous. I was labeled a dangerous person. I had newspaper articles call me the most dangerous for some reason I was a white supremacist, the most dangerous white supremacist in Europe. And
it's good to be number one.
Yeah, I'm apparently I was like a human trafficker, and I had ties to Russia and a whole load of other things. I think I have a Russian neighbor. I think that was the tie. It was absolutely over the top ridiculous, and it was because I was saying things that were disrupting the narrative back 10 years ago when the narrative was really tight and no one was getting out of lockstep. And then that's all falling apart now. Now you can say anything you want, whether it's true or not, and people have to figure it out on their own. But you will still see the people that are promoted by the mainstream are almost always not telling you the truth.
What about age? I feel like there's a lot of people that are way too young to give meaningful advice, and also people that think they can advise you on things that they have zero experience in and zero wisdom in.
Yeah, so people should stay in their wheelhouse. I have some young clients that are coaches, and they're in their 20s, but they coach about something they know. They're in a very narrow field about things they know. So some of them are performance coaching, so they help you get better at the thing you want to do, remove your anxiety and blocks in that area, because that's what they had to do for themselves to get where they are now. But if you want someone to be a relationship coach, I'm not just using my wisdom. I have 450 years of my family's wisdom written down. That's what I use to coach people. Plus, I've been giving advice on relationships. I'm 45, since I was 15, 30 years. Okay, that's most people's entire career, and they're retiring. And I'm halfway through my career. I'm never going to retire. Not just because there will never be retirement benefits for people our age, but because I love what I do. So I'm never going to retire. As long as someone needs help, I'm going to be there. And I can speak and move and communicate. And look for those people that have that long experience. Most coaches online have only been around a couple years. So here's what I do. First, no anons. If you're anonymous, we don't know anything about you. You might not even be a real person. You might be like a 3 or 4 person marketing account. Okay, so no anons. Nobody that does not have a life that's something like what you'd like. No one who doesn't show their face and speak openly, because you can show your name, but if you're not showing your face, is that your real name connected to it? And no one who's being promoted by the mainstream. That's basically what it is. It's just because the people who tell the truth aren't profitable in the mainstream. It's not that they want to lie to you. It's just that lies are so profitable, and that's all they care about, making more money.
Yeah, they're not so much immoral as basically amoral. They don't care.
They're following incentives. And that's the public's fault. We in the public can fix that by demanding truth instead of lies. That's all we have to do. Stop lying to us. We are seeing that on politics, actually. We're seeing that in politics. People are sick of the lies. They're not exactly asking for truth. They're just saying, don't tell me the lie. Next step is tell me the truth. Like, we're shifting over there. I think we've realized how painful being lied to repeatedly is and how demoralizing it is. And so we're shifting there. We'll get there. It's slow because we're looking at our little tiny lifetime in the midst of the, march of human history that's this wide. And we're that much. And we're like, it's taking too long. And we look back on some Roman trend and we're like, over this 150-year period, this thing shifted. We're like, it's been 3 months. Why are we still in lockdown?
Elon bought Twitter like 2 years ago. Why isn't the world saved yet?
Yeah, exactly. Why the Bitcoin just got invented? How come it hasn't already replaced a 5 millennial old banking system? Well, things take time, and that's the other thing is look for a coach or mentor or therapist that uses a system or multiple systems to help you. You don't want someone to tell you what to do, because you need to go back to them every time you have a question. What I teach people is methods of decidability. How do you decide what to do and make yourself do it? And I'll show you how to do that. And then you can apply that anywhere. This is why I don't normally keep clients for long periods of time. They work with me for 6 months to a year, and they don't need any more help. They're able to coach themselves.
The clients you have do they start out as like medium high agency? Because I feel with some people, like, they're never going to get anywhere. But if they're at a certain place, there's a certain takeoff.
I am now so expensive that if you don't have a good job, which means you have to have some level of agency, you can't afford it. So you have to be doing financially well enough to afford me, and so that is a filter. That's a minimum filter there, and that gives me people that are usually successful at their job and not in all the other areas of their life.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much for the time. It was a pleasure. I hope people get something out of this, and I hope we chat again sometime soon.
Excellent. Thank you. It's been great, Alex.